Communication is a major part of our lives, and we communicate in many different ways. In this section, we will explore different methods and modes of communication. Face-to-face, audio, video, and text are all common modes of communication that can be broken down into more specific styles. We encounter in-person communication on a daily basis. This is an instant mode of face-to-face communication in which you get the benefit of getting visual cues from the people you are communicating with, which can be very helpful. Audio is a voice-only mode of communication, such as making a phone call. Audio is also an instant communication mode, but communicators don't have the benefit of seeing each other. Audio communication has enhanced in recent times with the introduction of video, which allows us to simulate an in-person conversation when parties are not in the same location. Now, text communication includes any form of written communication, such as text messages, emails, newspapers, and books. Text communication is much easier to use when you need to distribute information to a large group of people or want to save a record of that communication. However, you can't enjoy the benefits of live or audio communication modes. The way we communicate on a regular basis can be bucketed under three different methods: one-way communication, two-way communication, and collaborative communication. The names explain the methods very well. Let's take a quick look. So, one-way communication is a flow of information or a message sent in one direction. Examples of this are announcements, advertisements, and faxes, although they're quite outdated now. Two-way communication is an exchange of information between two parties where both parties transmit information to each other, such as during a phone call or an in-person meeting. Collaborative communication, on the other hand, usually involves a group and there is collective information flow, such as during a team meeting or even a family discussion. Let's now apply these methods specifically to workplace communication and try and think of examples of each. An example of one-way communication at work could be a memo sent out to all staff or a voicemail left for a colleague. A lunch meeting with a colleague is a form of two-way communication, as are emails sent back and forth between your boss and yourself. But when you have a team discussion or group problem-solving session, then you are engaging in collaborative communication. Taking this a step further, communication can also be classified under three specific modes: the interpersonal mode, the interpretive mode, and the presentational mode. These modes are very important when it comes to language learning, and exposure and practice to all three modes greatly improves your ability to learn and pick up a new language. This mode of communication is usually a meaningful two-way communication where there is an active exchange of information between individuals. Because it's a two-way exchange, interpersonal communication has a higher chance of success than the other two communication modes. It's also very often spontaneous, unlike the other modes. Interpersonal mode is most obvious during a conversation, which involves both speaking and listening, but it can also be achieved through reading and writing, such as the exchange of instant messages. Now, the second mode, the interpretive mode, is one-way receptive communication, where the audience is not able to actively engage with the sender, but just receives their message. This form of communication involves listening, reading, and viewing. Examples of interpretive communication that involves listening could be listening to the radio or a speech. Reading could be reading stories, blogs, and even maps or signs. And viewing includes television shows and movies. But what's common amongst all these examples is that this mode involves a message being sent out which the audience must interpret. And that's where the name comes from. The last mode, the presentational mode, is also one way. It is targeted communication that is directed at an audience, such as readers, listeners, or viewers, but it's simply a presentation of information and not an exchange. There is no direct opportunity for the audience to engage with the presenter. Presentational communication usually occurs when concepts and ideas are presented in order to inform or explain something, or sometimes even to persuade the audience. An example of this is a documentary in which facts and events are presented, or a brochure used to advertise a service. So let's have a quick check-in and see what we learned in this section. We looked at the common modes of communication and then looked at these modes of communication at the workplace. Then we looked at the three methods of communicating: one-way communication, two-way, and collaborative communication. And finally, we went into a little more depth to look at these three modes of communication, which is particularly useful when it comes to language learning. And these modes were interpersonal mode, interpretive mode, and presentational mode.